folks, and welcome to the Horror Corner. Good evening, folks, and welcome to the Horror Corner. I'm your host, Sean Patrick Erschen, and this week we are ranking my personal top 20 meet and greet experiences with different celebrities, whether it be actors and actresses, or certain musicians I've met over the years, or some wrestlers that I've met. Before we get into it, I just want to say any celebrity I ever met was always really nice to me. These are just ones that stand out to me that went above and beyond the call of duty. I mean, I could have a top 100, I've met so many celebrities. I only ever had one disappointing experience, which I'll point out to you now. That being Stan Lee. Yes, Stan the Man Lee, the biggest name in comic book history. Yes. He's a big star, let's face it. He was the co-creator of Spider-Man and, some of the X-Men, some of the Avengers, so many characters in comic book history that he helped create and he wrote on the comic books. So I had him sign this edition of Avengers. It's a really old one that he did write on. So the problem with my experience with Stan Lee is maybe not so much his fault per se. It's the fact that, when you're a big star, you got a whole big entourage and you got all kinds of security, And I think that was the problem. They really rush you through, they really want to get you out of there as quick as humanly possible, and that was my experience. I didn't get to say one single word to Stan Lee. They just ran it like a conveyor belt, like, come on, move on, get your signature, get out of here, like, it was kind of crazy because I had waited for 3 to 4 hours to meet this man, and I didn't even get to say a word to him. And I will have to say a little bit of it is Stan Lee's fault because he didn't even lift his head to, acknowledge me. Just, had his head down, sign my comic, and that was it. Moving on. Get out of here. Let's go. Next. That was the type of experience it was, and it was just very disappointing. Here's a guy that I idolize, So yeah, the comic book fan in me, I used to be a comic book nerd growing up, it kind of hurt, And next up, I'll have a couple of honorable mentions, and first one being Ian McCulloch from Zombie from 1979, one of my all-time favorite zombie films. A really nice guy, distinguished British gentleman, he was telling me some stories about working on the film. And what Lucio Fulci was like to work with, that he was very intense, but he had a real good relationship with Lucio. And also he mentioned that he played Doctor Who once in one of the episodes, so that was really cool. Next up was Nick Castle, who played Michael Myers, the Shape in the original Halloween. Yes, the original Boogeyman. Really cool guy, really nice, and he's also an accomplished film director, too. He directed The Last Starfighter and many other films, so, yeah. He also just happens to be Michael Myers. Alright, let's get into it, shall we? In at number 20 is going to be Amy Steele. Yes, Ginny from Friday the 13th, Part 2. I remember having such a nice conversation with her. I made sure to tell her that I thought she was the best final girl in the Friday the 13th franchise, easily. And one of the best final girls of all time. We also talked a little bit about, the film April Fool's Day. I thought she was great in that, too. She was very sweet, very nice, big smile on her face, And got a great picture there. She signed my poster of Friday the 13th Part 2. Really, really nice. Next up, we have the amazing Barbara Crampton from Re-Animator and From Beyond and Castle Freak and so many others. Yeah, she was great. very bubbly, very friendly, very outgoing, and she just looks fantastic, huh, for her age. There I am pimping the Re-Animator t-shirt. And I made a point to mention a recent movie that she did where she played a vampire that I thought she was very good in, too. And next up, we have Tony Moran, who also played Michael Myers in the 1978 classic. He did this scene where, at the end, where he wakes up and chokes out Jamie Lee Curtis, and Jamie Lee rips his mask off, and you get to see his face for one of the few times in the entire series that you get a good look at his face, and that was Tony Moran. So, had a great experience. He was very kind, very nice, and spent a lot of time with him, and my wife really liked him as well. Christy really thought he was sweet and nice, and he signed a few different things I had. Later on, he kind of got a bad rap because a video came out where he said some kind of derogatory things about the fans and about some of the people that worked on the film, like Jamie Lee Curtis and stuff. When that came out, it kind of soured me a little bit, but Danielle Harris, who starred in Halloween 4 and 5, did an interview with him that I thought was really interesting, kind of confronting him about that and, kind of clearing the air on some things. But yeah, that did kind of take him down a notch. He probably would have been higher on this list if it wasn't for that. Next up was Ken Kirzinger, who played Jason Voorhees in Freddy vs. Jason, and I just thought he was super, super nice. He took a lot of time with me, and we talked a lot about the making of the film, Freddy vs. Jason, and how I thought, he did a fantastic job in that, and he doesn't get a lot of credit, really. A lot of people didn't care for him. They thought Kane Hodder should have played the character because he had played him in a few movies already. But I really enjoyed Ken Kirzinger and Freddy vs. Jason, and he was this real nice guy, and I like kind of the Frankenstein's monster approach to the character, which I discussed that with him. And here, when I did the photo with him, it was so cool when he's in the full gear as Jason. And I remember him saying that, wow, you really sold that, when he's got the machete to my neck, and he's like, wow, awesome, you really sold that good. I was like, nice, I took that as a great compliment. And next up we have Dick Warlock, yes, who signed my Halloween 2 figure there. Of course, Michael Myers in Halloween 2 from 1981. You guys know how much of a big fan I am of that film. And I made sure I told him that I think he is the greatest Michael Myers of all time. The scariest, most evil, most sadistic version of Michael Myers, in my opinion. I told him that, and I told him about, enjoyed him in Halloween 3 and all that. I wanted to say a lot more than I did, but I kind of clammed up, That's what happens sometimes. You meet your idols, you get starstruck, you don't know what to say sometimes. But, he was very nice. I could tell he was kind of sick at the time. He wasn't feeling good, but he was very nice. And next up was kind of a funny one. It's Sebastian Bach from Skid Row. I just kind of happened to bump into him at Great Adventure in New Jersey in the summer. I went to Great Adventure, which is like, a big Six Flags theme park kind of thing. And I just happened to bump in, and I happened to run into him. I was like, oh, Sebastian Bach. You can't miss him. He's huge. He's like 6'5", big, tall dude, long ass hair. He just really stands out in a crowd. But he was super nice, really cool. He signed my t-shirt. I was wearing like a Metallica t-shirt or something. He was like, yeah, we were supposed to tour with these guys, and stuff like that. He was just really nice, really bubbly, really fun. Just a great guy, and it was just a cool experience, It wasn't like I went to go see him at a convention or at a signing or anything. I just randomly ran into the dude, and he happens to be a celebrity. Next up is, a controversial figure, and that is, of course, the late Hulk Hogan. Yes. Biggest name in the history of professional wrestling, in my opinion. Biggest superstar, And he is my personal favorite wrestler of all time. I feel like he had the greatest career in wrestling, Probably the longest run that anyone's ever had, really, on top. And yeah, I know it's a rough deal with him. He's done a lot of things that I don't like. Said a lot of things that I don't like and that I don't approve of. I don't condone some of his behavior, but he was very nice to me, and as many people know, he was always great with the fans, the wrestling fans. He always treated them with respect and kindness, and this time is no different. He's very, very nice to me, really cool guy, except, he has a lot of issues. He's not perfect. He's not a saint, but he is my favorite wrestler. Next up was Mark Patton from A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2. He played Jesse in the film. Really super, super sweet, super nice guy. And he took a lot of time with me. I talked to him for a good 10 minutes, just talking all about the making of Elm Street Part 2, how I felt that it's such an underrated film in the franchise. And I talked about how I saw his documentary called The Scream Queen or something like that, where, it was all about his experiences and behind the scenes making the film, and the fact that, he is a gay man, and that kind of came through in the film, and the fact that the director of the film did not acknowledge a lot of the, homoerotic tendencies in Elm Street 2, and he took issue with that. And in the film, he kind of confronts the director of Elm Street 2 about that. And I was saying to Mark that I thought that was really cool. I really liked that. He kind of confronted him about it. And, he kind of put him in his place. And I thought that was a lot of fun. And next up is going to be the great Dee Wallace. Yes, from The Howling, my favorite werewolf movie of all time. And many other films, of course, like The Hills Have Eyes, obviously E.T., Cujo, Critters, and so many others. Just an absolute sweetheart. Me and my wife Christy met her, and we had such a nice time. She even had cookies out for everybody. She's like, have some cookies, I remember I talked to her about The Hills Have Eyes, that really intense moment in the trailer, when the thugs steal the baby and kidnap the baby, and how intense that was and how scary that was. And I wanted to get her thoughts about the making of that. She was like, yeah, it was really intense. And she was like, even then, I played mothers. Even back in 1977, she played mothers. She was playing someone's mom. I thought that was funny. But yeah, she was great. Just really nice. She's like she could be your mother, And next up, we have Robert Englund. Yes, the great Robert Englund, who just got his star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. Yes, he played, of course, the legendary, the iconic horror icon, Freddy Krueger. So, huge star, and yeah, I waited 4 hours. Once again, it was a similar situation to Stan Lee, but this is much more positive because once I got up there, I was able to talk to him, and I had a great time. And we were poking fun, me and my friend Jason, about how long the wait was, and he was we were just having a good laugh about it, and he was very nice. And yeah, he signed my Elm Street poster there. Which I also have Heather Langenkamp on there too, played Nancy in the film. Another honorable mention. But yeah, I thought it was like the opposite of my Stan Lee experience. Here, he was very nice, very talkative, very open, very gracious, and very polite, and just really cool, you know. So it was worth the wait for me, because I had him sign my poster, and I had a great time talking with him, and I also got my picture with him, too, of course. Which I waited another 3 hours for. Next up is none other than William Shatner. Yes, Captain Kirk himself I met at Boston Comic-Con. Again, another situation where it could have been like a Stan Lee type thing where the guy's a huge star. Everybody knows who William Shatner is from Star Trek, you know, Captain Kirk. And yeah, I'm a big Star Trek fan, of course, especially when it comes to the original series, where William Shatner played Captain Kirk, of course. And, yeah, he's got a huge entourage, all kinds of security around trying to push you through. But when I met him to go take the picture, he shook my hand, had a big smile on his face. He was like, "Great to meet you." He was just so nice. And yeah, that stands out to me, you know. It was a similar type thing. I waited 4 hours to meet him or something, and it was worth it because he was really nice. I got this great picture with him, and yeah, just a really cool experience, very positive. Next up, we have Danielle Harris. Yes, Jamie Lloyd from Halloween 4 and 5, which I just love, you know. She's just beloved to the Halloween franchise. Also, of course, she was in the 2 Rob Zombie films as well as Annie. But yeah, of course, my favorite is Jamie Lloyd in Halloween 4 and 5. And yeah, I had her sign my poster right there, Halloween 5. Very cool, really, really down to earth. Almost like I got a little bit of a rock and roll vibe from her, you know. I just thought she was really nice, talking all about, you know, her experience as Jamie Lloyd. And I remember I asked her about, you know, how come you didn't return to Halloween 6, and she told me about the, you know, financial issues, you know, they didn't want to, you know, give her what she's worth, you know, and I thought that was disappointing, and as did a lot of fans, of course. But yeah, she was just fantastic, wonderful, very cute. Next up we have Bill Moseley from Texas Chainsaw Massacre Part 2. Got his signature right there on the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 poster where he played Chop Top in the film. Just a great character, and he's a great guy. One of the things that stood out to me is he actually did the Chop Top voice. You know, he's like, "Dog will hunt, get that bitch, Leatherface, get that bitch." I was like, oh my god. And it would sound exactly like the film, and it was so cool. I was like, wow, I wasn't expecting that. He caught me off guard, you know. I just thought that was something that was really cool and different. He actually got into character for me, you know. I thought that was cool. I told him how much I thought that Texas Chainsaw 2 was very, very underrated. That's the most underrated film in the franchise. Like, yeah, I completely agree, you know. And of course, he's been in many other great films too, you know. And obviously, he was in, you know, House of a Thousand Corpses and The Devil's Rejects and all that. You know, he's had many great roles. But, you know, my personal favorite's always going to be Chop Top and Texas Chainsaw 2 because I absolutely love that film. And next up we have Sandy Johnson, another one from the original Halloween. She played Judith Myers. And the thing about Sandy Johnson is I actually had her on my YouTube channel. You know, I had an interview with her, and I thought that was such a great experience. She's the first celebrity I ever did a YouTube video with, and that was so cool. And she was so incredibly nice, you know. She's just such an absolute sweetheart, you know. And she was very gracious, very giving in the interview, you know. I asked her all kinds of questions, you know, for a long time. So she really gave a lot, and I thought it was great. And meeting her was exactly the same. Meeting her in person, she was just lovely, you know. Next up was a very similar experience. And that was Judith O'Dea from the original Night of the Living Dead. Yes, Barbara, they're coming to get you, Barbara. Such an iconic scene and an iconic movie, you know. And yeah, she was the lead actress in the film, and I just think she was fantastic in that movie. And man, she was just an absolute sweetheart. She took her time with me. She told me a really cool, like, ghost story that happened to her on the set of Night of the Living Dead, you know, at the graveyard. She was telling me this story like she saw a ghost and stuff like that. I thought that was really cool, really fun. Yeah, just wonderful, wonderful lady. Next up is kind of a sad one, but also an awesome one, and that is none other than Dimebag Darrell Abbott and Vinnie Paul Abbott, of course, from Pantera fame. And I do have their signature on a big Pantera poster I have, but, you know, this was Damageplan, the last band that they were in. You know, before he unfortunately was murdered on stage by some crazy whacked out Pantera fan, you know. Such a sad, sad incident. One of the saddest incidents in the history of rock, really. I mean, here's a guy who was just incredibly talented, and as was Vinnie Paul as well, you know, of course. Such a horrible situation, and yeah, I did see Damageplan twice in 2004, and that's the year I met them as well, and that is the year that he died. Next up we have the Mistress of the Dark, Elvira, Cassandra Peterson. Absolutely love Elvira. I love her films. I love the movie Macabre series that she did. You know, she's just an icon in horror, you know. She's the horror hostess, Elvira. And it was great to get my picture with her in the full regalia as the Elvira character, which she doesn't do anymore, unfortunately. You know, she kind of retired from that. She still does conventions, but she's always like herself, Cassandra Peterson, you know. Which, you know, as herself, you know, she is bubbly and witty and always quick with the one-liners. And when she plays Elvira, you can tell that's a real amped-up version of herself, really, you know. Sexy, beautiful, and funny as hell. And I was just kind of amazed, you know, seeing her. She was basically playing the character Elvira before my eyes, you know, whipping out these quick-witted one-liners, and it was just so funny, you know. And it was such a great time and a great experience. Next up, we have Kerry King from Slayer. My favorite metal band of all time. I had him sign this edition of God Hates Us All. And I have a few other things that he signed as well. And guess what? I didn't pay a single dime. I met him at this guitar store, you know. And it was really cool. And he actually was there, you know, meeting with the fans, and he had his guitar with him. He had it hooked up to the amp, and he was whipping out solos, and it was just amazing. It was just like mind-blowing. It was so cool. And I got to meet him afterwards. You know, he signed several different things for me. He signed a DVD of one of their concert videos. I got a big poster signed from Slayer. And he was really nice, and Kerry King is kind of a controversial figure too, you know, in the way that Hulk Hogan is almost. Not quite to that level, but, you know, he's always in the media doing interviews, and he's a very open guy, you know, he always says what's on his mind, and he's made a lot of controversial comments over the years, and, but all I have to say is my personal experience with him was just great, and it was awesome, and I got to see him play guitar in front of my eyes, and it was amazing, you know, so I had a great experience with him. And Slayer's my favorite metal band of all time, really, so. Next up is another kind of a sad one. but an awesome one, and that is Miss Elizabeth. Yes, the iconic Miss Elizabeth, famous valet in professional wrestling. Obviously, she was not only married to the Macho Man, Randy Savage, but she was his longtime manager and valet in WWE and the WCW as well. And she managed other people in WCW too, including Ric Flair and Lex Luger, who she ended up, being with him, and was with him during the time of her sad death, But I remember meeting her, and it was just like, I was just amazed. I was in awe. It was like I met Princess Diana. I was like meeting royalty. She was just glowing, just incredibly beautiful, and very, very sweet, very nice, and yeah, I was just blown away. I was just like in awe of her beauty and her persona and her, she was just glowing, radiant, and elegant. Yeah, really intense, but awesome. It was just great meeting her, and it's so sad how she died, and when you think about it, it's just, I could never picture her being that way too, being someone who abused drugs and stuff. She didn't really seem like that kind of person to me, but you never know behind closed doors. Next up is going to be Miss Felissa Rose in that number 2 from Sleepaway Camp. She played Angela. And I love what she wrote on my poster here. "Meet me at the waterfront after the social," a classic line from the film. Of course, I absolutely love her in the film Sleepaway Camp. Just an absolutely iconic slasher film. And she was just one of the nicest people like I've ever met in person. Yeah, she really took her time with me. I remember I was talking to her about Slayer, because she was the producer on a few of Slayer's videos, for the Repentless album. And we talked about that, and that was so cool. And, she took a nice picture with me, and she really took her time talking to me about Sleepaway Camp and the legacy of her character and how important that film was to the slasher genre. And she was just amazing, just incredibly kind, incredibly sweet, funny, and beautiful at the same time. Just awesome experience. And in that number 1 is going to be Metallica. Yes, the biggest heavy metal band in the world. And believe it or not, I met them all at once, the entire band. And this was for a record store opening in New York City, so how exciting. And this was during the Black Album era, so yeah, they all still had the long hair down to their backs, They were all still very young. And I was just blown away. I was just completely starstruck and mesmerized, because at that time they were my favorite metal band, They were my favorite band, period, probably. So yeah. And at that time, James Hetfield had burned his arm, during a pyrotechnics issue in one of their shows. So at that time, he was just singing. When you go see him in concert, he was just singing. He wasn't playing the guitar. And yeah, I did see one of those shows too. At that time, I think James was still a little bit shy, He wasn't like Lars, who loves to deal with the media and loves to talk. Lars has always been their mouthpiece. But you see James nowadays, he's very upfront and, loves talking to the fans and interacting with the fans. Back then, I think he was still a little bit shy, so he was the quiet one of the bunch. And back then, Jason Newsted was the bass player. He was really cool, really fun. And Kirk, of course, Kirk Hammett was really cool, He's a huge horror fan, so I love that about him. So he was really cool to talk about with that. So yeah, Just an amazing time, very exciting. The place was jam-packed, the line was out the door, and, just the fact being in the middle of New York City was awesome, and for such a cool event. Yeah, so that's going to be my number one, and that does it for the top 20 celebrity meet and greet experiences for me. So, thank you guys, tune in, and stay scared. Good evening, folks, and we got some brand new merchandise for you over at www.thehorrorkona.com, and that's CONA.com. Representing the Horror Corner. Great new design. We got the Morbid Hour live stream there, you got the Horror Hangout live stream there, and you got my nemesis, the Dark Fate. So grab your t-shirt over at www.thehorrorkona.com. And we also got this beautiful new mug. Look at that. Very, very cool. Thought that came out really nice. So grab your merchandise today over at www.thehorrorkona.com. Folks, don't forget to grab your Sean Patrick Erschen gear and represent the Horror Corner. Also check out these awesome mugs we have. Perfect for your coffee. And definitely check out the Horror Hangout live stream t-shirt and represent the legacy of the Horror Hangout. Check out the link in the description below this video.